Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm very delighted to have Teri Cochrane with us. Teri is the founder of the Global Sustainable Health Institute and an international thought leader in longevity. Through her decades of clinical work, Teri has developed a Cochrane Method, a future-facing multi-system health and longevity model. This model examines the intersection of genetic expression due to pathogenic and environmental causes, energy, and her client's unique personal blueprint. Teri specializes in solutions to complex health conditions and serves world-class athletes. She's the author of the best-selling book, The Wildatarian Diet, Living as Nature Intended. Teri, it's so great to have you on the show.
Stephan, so good to be with you and your audience, truly.
So I would love to start off with just a bit of an origin story of how you ended up where you're at now. Like I'm guessing you didn't just come right out of primary school thinking I'm going to work with energy and longevity and bio hacking and all that. So how did you get into this? What sparked the interest?
Well, you're absolutely right. The origin story always comes around maybe in a circuitous way. At least it did for me. I had an institutional finance background, international finance, real estate, risk management, did not know anything about energy or medicine or precision wellness or longevity, and was in that world of institutional finance and risk management for almost 20 years. And at the birth of my first son, by the time he was 3, we were told that he would have brain seizures, he wouldn't be normal, he wouldn't grow past 5'4". We were in the hospital quite a bit. And the allopathic models that we that were all we knew were failing him. And so, as a risk manager by nature and a Cuban refugee who was taught to live in a solution environment through my parents, I decided to become the risk manager for my son's health and seek a solution that I was told wasn't available. And that was when he was 5. We went 2 years down the allopathic model only, and he was only further falling down the cliff. And when I started applying my risk management skills, I just started really deeply researching. This was, 25 years ago. He's 28 now. And so, no internet, no Google. You couldn't find anything. Keyword optimization was not available. Um, and so, I really just did a tremendous amount of research in libraries and really observing children and families and how their child's trajectory was either improving or not. And just as it became a really uh, motivated reporter and interviewer, if you will, interviewing the families, really reporting on what I was finding to myself on these books. And it was an epiphany of sorts over 50 or more books and multiple research articles that I said, oh my goodness, it's what we're feeding him, is literally poisoning my son. So that led to the turning around of his trajectory. And then in 2003, at the age of 10, I left my job and retired from this almost 20-year career and really went to back to school to study functional medicine, functional nutrition, bioenergetics, biochemistry, quantum physics, and some of them in academia. But what I found, Stefan, what was more important for me is I had no walls. So I wasn't bound by any kind of traditional, this is the way you learn and this is what we're going to teach you. What I found is I really just asked, did not know at the time, but was just asking the universe to meet me uh, without walls so that I might be able to put these puzzle pieces together that now, yet another 17 years later, I've developed a methodology that has had transformational effects to tens of thousands of individuals.
Hmm. So one of your biggest challenges became one of your biggest gifts, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
When you were talking about what you were feeding your son was actually poisoning him, I'd love to explore that a bit more. So I remember the Hippocrates quote, "Let food be thy medicine." And I'm sure there's a tie-in there in what you're going to tell us. So yeah, could you go a little more deep into the foods that were essentially poison?
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the opening quotes in my book, non coincidentally. So we were feeding him the
There are no
traditional,
coincidences, are
no
there?
coincidences. We were feeding him a traditional standard American diet, even though it was organic and homemade. It was still peanut butter, chicken, wheat, gluten at the time, wheat, a lot of orange juice, citrus, because we were told that orange juice is good for us because of the vitamin C, and a lot of corn when we went gluten free, actually, which was not the right thing for him. So by changing it, turned out what was the underlying root of my son's issues was an adrenal fatigue, a significant adrenal fatigue that caused him to require massive amounts of steroids to be able to breathe and to be able to not bleed throughout with a bleeding eczema. However, that was causing an underlying rebound effect that anything that had mold or acid. And so, what is peanut? It's a massive mold. It's also an oxalate, we've now found. And oxalates trigger mold, and oxalate also triggers a massive histamine response in the gut, but he was having tremendously life threatening asthma and hyperhistamine response. The orange juice was acidic. The corn is a mycotoxin that feeds the mold that was being that was growing in his body because of the steroids that we were giving him, and then further fed by the peanut butter. And chicken, as we now know, and I've been pioneering in this work, the conventional chicken contains these truncated protein structures called amyloids. They're indigestible protein structures, and the clinical literature and our tens of thousands of anecdotal outcomes prove that these truncated protein structure actually feed the biofilm that protects the organism that was hurting him in the first place. So I was literally putting poison on his plate.
Hmm. And how long did this go on for before you changed his diet and got this addressed?
Well, what was so fascinating, Stefan, is within 4 days of eliminating those large offenders, the allergic shiners under his eyes started receding. His peak flow meter, which measured how much oxygen he was getting in and out, started shifting positively. So we had actually biomarkers that said, we're on to something. We're
Hmm.
on to something. And that was the genesis over time to allow me to really step away from what on in the land of third dimension was a very, very successful career. Uh, but it didn't matter because I knew there was something greater breathing through me, that I needed to become that voice for other parents that were told, deal with a broken child, and we're going to patch them up with medicine that only further deteriorates them over time.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to get into the third dimension versus fifth dimension, all that in a minute. But peanut butter, is there an alternative that is healthy, that doesn't have the mold, that doesn't have the oxalates? Is it perhaps cashew butter? Is it almond butter? Is all of it bad? What's your take on
Great
that?
question. So almond butter, interestingly enough, if you haven't, it's not moldy, but it has a high oxalate level. It's one of the highest. So almond butter is out. However, cashew butter is really important because it has a high level of molybdenum. And for my son's situation, sulfur was a really big driver for his asthma, impaired sulfur processing. And cashews rich in molybdenum support the sulfur pathway. So cashew butter, pecan butter is really rich in vitamin B6, also important for that impaired sulfation pathway. Sunflower butter is really rich in sunflower lecithin, which actually helps the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, that fight or flight response, or helps with the epinephrine response. So yes, there are alternative butters, and part of my methodology is to really understand what is your genetic blueprint and your current state of health, bring them to an intersection, and eat and supplement to that.
Hmm. Gotcha. And I'm sure we're gonna delve into the Wildatarian diet and what's good, what's not so good to incorporate into a diet, depending on you know, each person, I'm sure, has different needs and requirements based on whatever it is, their genetics, blood type, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get to that, but I want to start going down this spiritual rabbit hole a bit with you. You mentioned earlier asking the universe, and that prompted me uh, to point out something that I learned from a previous guest on the show, Kim White, and the episode was all about angels. And one of the things he said really stuck with me. That was, don't ask the universe, because the universe is duality. It's good and bad. It's dark and light. It's, you know, good and evil. Whereas you ask God, and He's all good, right? And so, if you want to ask the universe and get the mix of the good and the bad, well, feel free, but you'll get a, a better, more benevolent um, outcome by asking God directly. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
That is beautiful. I have not, but that is quite beautiful. And so, in the asking of the universe instead of the direct ask, it's a matter of vernacular.
Hmm.
And so, it's inviting truth. And so, it's an invitation for a receiving of a vibrational aspect that is true. And so, truth will never be anything other than truth. Illusion can change and shift and have different shades. And so when there is truth, I believe, and I've witnessed it enough in myself and in the various clients that I work with at this quantum level, is that the body will come to a still point of peace.
Hmm.
And that for me is the affirmation of a deep knowing that also when we think about where does that live, and the studies show that, I call it circle K because I believe we have three levels of knowing. We have intellectual knowing, we have intuitive knowing, and then we have the knowing of the heart. And that heart is, in many traditions, the seat of knowledge. And so, at that level of that still point, and the reason why it's still point is when we, at least in my observation, is the heart really gives us a lot of resonance right in that heart brain coherence. And when the heart is out of alignment, it's going to beat in a different way. But that still point gives us that metronomed cadence of coherence. And coherence provides peace in the body to settle down into a rest and restore. And that's truth for me.
Hmm. When you said, you know, truth, there's a movie that I saw on Netflix last year I really liked. It's called Kardec. It's about Allan Kardec, who was the founder of the Spiritism movement in the 1800s.
Mm.
Great movie. And one of his psychic clients or colleagues was receiving a message, and it was signed by the Spirit of Truth.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't hear that term bandied about much. I hear the Holy Spirit talked about a lot in Christian circles. I hear about spirit with a capital S in kind of psychic mediumship spiritualism circles. You know, just spirit, and that is a catch-all for receiving guidance also from spirit guides and you know, God and angels and so forth. But yeah, I'm curious about the spirit of truth. If that resonates for you, what comes to mind when you hear that?
Well, I do believe that we have vibrational frequencies surrounding us, angelic uh,
Mhm.
resonance from the angelic realm, guides and masters. And as more and more is revealed, this is becoming moving from mysticism to science. right? So
Mhm.
science, I believe, and I think this is Dispenza, is that mysticism or mysticism is science that yet hasn't been air quote proven, right? Um,
Right. Which reminds me of that quote that all technology sufficiently advanced looks like magic.
Amen.
I've- yeah.
Indeed, right? Amen is, and so it is. And I love the words abracadabra because that means as it is spoken, it shall become truth.
Yeah. In
And
Aramaic. Yeah.
that's right. That's
Right.
right. And so I do believe that when we tune in and how we tune in and why we tune in
Hmm.
is very important. The why is very important because intentionality really drives a lot of the reception.
Right.
And we have different capacities for listening to frequencies. And so, at what capacity am I living and breathing into in this very moment that will allow me to receive a certain level of truth? And what's so important, I
Hmm.
believe, Stefan, is all truth may not be revealed to us in all time, but what am I willing to see in the moment that gives me a bigger window and lens around all truth? It may be too big for me right now. In the ever infinite truth, can we as humans capture it in this human body? Maybe the vibrational frequency is too much, but if we can get appetizer bites, right, and then build on that, kind of build a menu, if you will, of that, that's quite magical, and what a gift.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was before we started recording or after, but you used the word circuitous, circuitous. Uh,
Circuitous.
and, it's a roundabout way of getting to your destination because it really isn't about the destination. It's about the journey. Yes, we have our spiritual mission and all that,
Yes.
but it's really about the journey and not about the destination of it. And I remember in the book, The Alchemist,
Yes.
how the shepherd boy was sent, so far on this journey just to be sent back. And have you read the book?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So I don't want to
Exactly.
spill the beans on the whole plot line, but I I found that to be quite a great plot twist to have him take that circuitous route. I'm still
It
having
is a
trouble pronouncing it.
circuitous route. I
Circuitous.
it's
Thank
like
you. Circuitous.
it is a
Circuitous.
circuitous route,
Circuitous.
and I believe, metaphorically, is where are you home? Where do you find yourself at home? And many of us are lost in our seeking, and so we never find home. And
Hmm.
and so again, one of the sayings back to my circle of truth is home is where the heart is, right? So back to that still point, back to that truth, back to knowing self. Reconnaître in French is to re-know. Reconocer in Spanish is to ser, is to be known. So these words in these various languages is to know self. So remembering to recognize is to know self.
And knowing yourself more than just this personality of your identity in this particular incarnation, can you tap into that multidimensional you and see, for example, your past lives, your soul mission, your future? Like, how do you tap into that?
That's a great question again. And I believe that we all have capacity to step into the as me. So we have various levels, I believe, of how we master being in the human form. First, it happens to us when we're in victim, then it happens with us. That's beautiful. We're kind of hanging out with it. And then it happens through us. So we're moving through. And when it happens as us, there's no separation. And so, in that as us, as me, as all, in the oneness of the universe, that one voice, verse, truth, then we can access that aspect of all that we've been, which I believe the great masters have had the in this that have been in physical form, like the great geniuses of Einstein and Mozart, that they had the ability to bring it in from the morphic field as them and access the future. Tesla, right? Edison,
Yep.
Jefferson, I believe, to access that. And so we have to be open and inviting it. Also, our vessel has to be free of interference, which also gets back to the biochemical level. That's why our biochemistry is so important, because we are a liquid crystalline structure that are receivers and transmitters. But if that liquid crystalline structure has interference, then we're not going to get the truth. We're going to get confused. And that's when we doubt. And that doubt is also an energy leak.
Well, it's also when you get interfered with and you're getting wrong messages or incorrect messages. You know, my wife Orion, she has a podcast as well called Stellar Life, and she
Beautiful.
just interviewed a famous pet psychic, Laura Stinchfield, who was also a guest on this show. And in Orion's interview of Laura, which just aired recently, as like this week when we're recording this here now, something just really popped for me that from that interview, and it's this: that Laura said one thing she doesn't like about gurus that happens way too often. These are gurus not just in the Eastern world but in Western as well. Is they'll apply their telepathy to their students, their flock, their devotees, and allow the student to think that they're available 24/7 telepathically, and they're not. And then what happens is these opportunistic spirits who aren't of the light will pop in and masquerade as the guru, and they'll get wrong information. So it's really critically
Right.
important to discern who these people are, or who these entities or spirits are that you're communicating with, because as we get more towards the fifth dimension and out of the three-dimensional kind of prison, then we become much more of a telepathic species, or
Yes.
telepathic form, of being. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think that that's actually very possible, and has seen it done where people go into psychotic breaks and their bodies are not theirs anymore. That's at the most extreme level. And that's why the intention and the invitation is so important, because once you set an invitation, a wave is pronounced through your physical being. And so only those are invited that stand on the right hand side, if you want to use God, that are of the caliber of the highest good for all, that is in the intentionality of a frequency that only will exist in light. And no one else is invited to the party. And by declaration, we are so powerful in our declaration, uh, and to hold that and not be in fear, because if you declare it but then you're in fear, you're actually collapsing the truth, because fear will collapse the field. You can't declare it and then say just kidding because I'm scared. It'll be really interesting as science evolves how we'll be able to measure the frequencies that come through and enter our field.
Hmm. One thing you said a few minutes ago about the liquid crystalline structure spurred a question for me I want to ask you, and that's about DNA. So it's a double strand, like double helix, but yet in the New Age community and the metaphysical community, they talk about 12 strands and the crystalline structure of DNA, and how, as we ascend into the fifth dimension, as we get more elevated in our consciousness, we activate our DNA. and the additional structure that's sitting there latent but not activated until now, until this time, and until we consciously are ready for it. So
Yes,
can you
and
can you
Lee
talk
Carroll,
on that a bit?
crime. Absolutely. So there are many sages. Cryon, channeled through Lee Carroll, is one of them, and I think he's written a book on. I've met Lee, lovely human, uh, on the 12 strands of DNA, and we are in a fascinating dance of living in the aspect of what we can allow ourselves to be open to in these dimensions. And so, this interdimensional, I'll call it interdimensional DNA, I see it as a if you look at a piano keys, the 88 keys is striking the keys to illuminate that facet of that liquid crystalline structure. Because if you think of crystalline structure, it becomes a transmitter. Crystal is a huge transmitter, right? Wi-Fi, and it's we have to transmit through prisms. And so it's that aspect of what am I tuning into vibrationally? And I say we have the music in us because music, which is wave, that is auditory for us, but there's some music that is in auditory. It's just another frequency of illumination. And so those DNA strands and that interdimensional DNA can be struck. And now that light is on. And it's like a ping, 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 ping. And as we ping, and then we ping, and that light then reverberates, right? Because light is wave as well, then we're matching others that are similarly striking those keys. It's a harmonious sound that is actually being built right now on the planet for those of us that are willing to step up to the choir.
Hmm. When you said ping, that's actually a technical term.
Uh,
When you let's say as a Unix systems administrator, you would type in the word ping and then uh, let's say an IP address, and it would contact that server and then send a response back that it was up, and then you would continually get responses back on a regular interval if the server is up, and if it's down, then you're gonna not hear back from it. So that's called a ping, and
Interesting.
it's a techie thing. Well, what Laura Stinchfield was saying in her interview with Orion was that she looks at a picture of the pet or of the person that she's going to connect with, because she also does people mediumship as well as pet psychic stuff with pets who are alive and pets who have crossed over. And it's looking into the eyes of the animal or the human on in the picture is like dialing a phone number, and
Interesting.
it connects the dots for me that it's a ping. It's like I'm pinging an IP address or a website address, right? And she referred to it as a phone number, so she doesn't get fooled or interfered with. She's calling direct to that spirit and connecting without getting fooled by some entity masquerading.
Isn't it interesting how we're when we're in the truth, we say the similar things that resonate at that same frequency. And
Yeah.
one of my through lines is I go direct, right? I go direct.
Right. And
So there's
that is a big issue in this awakening movement, I think, is that people are relying too heavily on intermediaries. And that's dangerous territory. You might even
agreed,
equate it to idol worship, from the
agreed.
Bible, all the warnings about idol worshiping. If you put some guru so high up that they are your intermediary to God, to the I am, to all that is. Instead of going
Mhm.
inside to your heart, like you said, that um, that triple knowing, the circle K. Like
Yeah,
I need to go into my heart, and my knowing in my heart, and the knowing in my intuition, and the knowing in my intellect, and make sure that I'm getting the right answers and the right guidance rather than relying on the guru who's serving as my intermediary. And it doesn't have to be like a quote unquote guru, it could just be your minister, it
right.
could be your coach, a mentor, and you put them on a pedestal. Idol worship, very dangerous territory.
100% agree with you, Stefan. And as a matter of fact, I've spoken with individuals and I said, if you're going to be in that realm, then you need to be in guru rotation. So not one guru gets too much power over you. No, because no one or no thing has power over us.
Yeah.
And part of the work that I teach through my one-on-one advisory is I'm going to teach you not to even want to talk to me anymore because you're going to have all you want. I'm supporting, I'm creating bridges. I'm not creating a bridge that is so unsteady that you're always going to need me to hold the rails for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my work. My work is to help catalyze the infinite potential, support you in catalyzing the infinite potential for you with you, not only me.
Yeah. Because all the answers are within. Uh,
Indeed.
and and Tony Robbins has this great quote that all I need is within me now. When I learned what he calls an incantation of that, and also um, life happens for me, not to me. That's another one of his. But
Mm-hmm.
everything I need is within me now. You
Yes.
just like with strength, with certainty, like everything I need is within me now. Everything I need is within me now. Like, just imagine being at one of his events and like
Yes.
it's like a rock concert, and I hadn't had the spiritual awakening when I learned that yet. So it just sounded like a good bumper sticker. Like, yeah, that's empowering. Yeah. Oh my goodness, the layers to that. It's
Yes.
incredible. And also to life happens to me, life happens for me, not to me.
Right.
Whoa, the depth of that. And I did not grok that at all. It just sounded like a really good bumper sticker. And oh, by the way, I learned a really cool kind of adjunct to that, or um, corollary to that, and that is this: life happens for me, not to me, but life actually also happens by me. So
Yes.
that's like another level. It's not just happening for me where I'm kind of a participant. No, I'm driving the bus. I'm the pilot of this universe because I'm the observer. That's the observer effect. And
Yes.
in the multiverse, in this little shard or slice of the multiverse that I pilot, I have so much more control and influence than I could possibly imagine.
And that's such a secret sauce that if we're willing to entertain that, because sometimes the bite's too big, right? Oh, that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're just willing to entertain, what if you already opened up that possibility? What if I am that powerful to be able to influence all of that which I am experiencing for the highest good?
Yeah.
That's
Well, also
magic.
reminds me of the Marianne Williamson quote, like we're not afraid of failing. We're afraid of how powerful we actually
Yes,
are. And
exactly.
who am I to be so bright and brilliant and amazing and wonderful and all that? Terrible paraphrase of the actual
You said
quote.
it well.
Well, we'll include the actual quote in the show notes, but it's our um, brilliance that freaks us out, I think.
And brilliance should not be confused with ego.
It's our
because
revelation of light and the
there you go.
ability to light up not just a room but the universe with our benevolence. It's powerful.
Beautiful.
It's very powerful.
And brilliance, in other words, brillar is to shine
Hmm.
in the Latin, in Spanish, to shine. So to be brilliant, to be bright is to shine. And so when you're shining, you are illuminated. When you are illuminated, now you're full of light, and in the light, you're going to cast away the darkness because that's the juxtaposition. That's the
Yeah.
duality.
Yeah.
And as humans, that duality is, I believe, an experiential aspect of understanding the difference. Because if we don't know the difference, then how do we know where we are? And it's that
Hmm.
relativity, right? That relative measure, that relative, I call it the where am I relative to where I desire? And I also talk about the want a lot. I want to do something. Well, let's just put you in the gap. I'm in the process of becoming, put you in the process of becoming. I think
Yeah.
that's very powerful. Words are so powerful because they set forth a wave and you're inviting it.
Yeah.
If you're inviting the want, well, okay, I'm always going to be wanting, right? Which is in the gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach
Yes.
and author of a bunch of books like Who Not How, he talks about the gap versus the gain, being in the gap, being in the
Ah,
gain, and he actually has a book out on the gap and the gain. So yeah, it's just so practical in everyday life and running a business and all that, and it's also very metaphysical too. And from a metaphysical standpoint, when you say words are powerful, we manifest through our words not just our reality, but we actually create angels through our words. So when we speak, we need to be in alignment and integrity with our thoughts and our actions, as well as our words. All three need to be aligned in purity to create powerful, positive angels. Otherwise, we're maybe having a less than benevolent thought or intention, and then we have a positive looking action, maybe also positive sounding words. So we're mouthing the words, we're doing, doing the right thing apparently, but we don't really mean it. We've just created some mischievous angels that are now whispering into our consciousness, and the intuition that we're receiving is not pure. It's not clear channeling from the
absolutely.
upper realms.
And sometimes the our life experience presents itself in a way that I call it to be crunchy instead of smooth. And so
Hmm.
when the crunch arises, which it's our right to make it smooth. How do we show up in the crunch? And I'll give you an example. Just recently, my brand manager, copywriter, my voice was brilliant, brilliant, beyond measure. And I've had such pleasure working with her. Was literally, she got the dream job, was recruited out of the dream job into a dream job. And on face, that looks really crunchy because she knows me. She breathe, I'm like, you make me sound better than me because of the way that you are such a brilliant writer. And so what we did is we created an opportunity for something better still. And Stephan, in 8 days, there were 250 resumes that popped up. I made a hire. They started in 8 days, and it was such and Emily, who shout out to Emily, was so gracious in creating her exit, and the employee who started 8 days later was already being trained before starting. It all worked out, and the transition has been so incredibly smooth, and it's something better still for all,
Yeah. When
and
one door
that you
closes,
complete
another door
cycles.
opens. And when you make room energetically for that closing door, then you invite in the new opportunity. So if you try to clutch on to the old opportunity and it's outlived it's contract, a spiritual contract.
Exactly.
Now you're blocking, you're kicking resistance in the path of the next thing, the next stage or level, and you got to just get out of your own way, and also to think of these people as souls who have um, agreed to be with you on this mission in different stages. So it's not a coincidence, or it's not just luck that this new person came in to replace this other person, with perfect timing and everything. You guys agreed, was, soul contract kind of agreed before even incarnating, like, okay, you're going to be my voice in writing to the world,
Yes.
and help me to um, amplify and amp up my mission. I'm like, yep, we're in this.
And that was so true, and it was so beautiful, and it was such a beautiful, infinite expression of gratitude, co-gratitude for the expression and the experience, because she has grown so much through the process that allowed her to be to gain this job of a lifetime that was not, she wasn't seeking it, it came to her.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because she was a frequency match for it.
Yeah.
And when we're a frequency match for it, it will not miss us. We have to be aware and open, because if we let it go, and this is why of late I've been telling many of my team and tribe, if you receive information, you must immediately act on it. And so we have to act on it, because otherwise we're going to now entertain another potentially infinite possibility. We could change lanes if we don't listen and act.
Mm-hmm.
And trusting, because when we are a clear vessel, there's no doubting what is the receiver, right? There's no doubting in the transmission, like you said, these mischievous angels. And this is the practice of the practice. I talk about practicing, just like when you're building muscle. You have to practice knowing the difference. And this is a daily practice, so we can get extremely skilled to know, is this truth? Or is this something else that's coming to be mischievous to take me off my highest intended path?
Mm. Something that I wanted to bring up about truth and trueness, or truthiness. That reminds me of the.
Truthiness, I love it.
Yeah, did you? There's a great clip. I forget who. Yeah. Okay, it was Colbert.
Oh, love him.
Yeah. So I got to put
Truthiness.
that truthiness. I need to put
That's
that
great.
truthiness YouTube episode into the show notes. It's hilarious. Anyway, so
Love him.
I don't know if you've seen this before, but there's a little graphic that's been around in social media that shows true on one two-dimensional plane, and then true on another two-dimensional plane, orthogonal to it, and then the three-dimensional truth. So the three-dimensional truth is a cylinder, and then
Mm,
the shadow of that three-dimensional cylinder on one two-dimension, it looks like a circle.
mm.
On another, it looks like a rectangle. On the
Ah,
orthogonal two, and both are true, but the truth is actually a cylinder. We're seeing true, but we're not seeing the truth with a capital T.
right.
That was really profound.
Exactly. And so this is where perspective and perception can become argumentative, because they're seeing one aspect of it and you're seeing the other, and they're not matching, and they're both right.
Yeah, exactly.
However, the perception is that no, this is what I see, and I'm clear in what I see, and the other is saying likewise, but it's a different part of the aspect. And so in that circumstance, what I offer is, what am I not willing to see that they're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I expand my lens so that I might capture a bit of their perspective?
Yeah. and to one of the concepts in Kabbalah is the 1% versus the 99% reality, and that we're in the 1% reality, and we think it's so vast and it's so much that it's unknowable. Well, all of that, including all the different fields of study that we could uh, look into and study and all that, that's only 1% of the bigger picture. And to access that 99% reality, we have to be um, cognizant that there is a 99% reality, and just have awareness of our awareness as the day goes on each day, like every moment. Try and be aware that, hey, there's so much more than this physical reality and everything in it. Like all the things that we could study, like rocket science and quantum physics and um, biochemistry, et cetera, et cetera. That's all in the 1%. Having that awareness of your awareness throughout your day is really, really important. And speaking of Kabbalah, by the way, just to circle back to something we talked about earlier, this idea of brilliance. Well, the foundational book in Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mysticism, the foundational book is called the Zohar, and in Hebrew that translates to splendor or radiance.
Beautiful. It's light. It is really light, and your aspect of being having awareness throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
This comes into unlearned truths, right? That come and they will bring themselves into weaving a thread of a story that feeds the curiosity or the missing pieces that you're looking for in that day. You'll get it on license plates. A specific song will come in on billboards. I was driving to a venue with a rocket scientist and an astrophysicist recently, and we were just looking. We were talking about something very intentional in the third dimension on space and so forth, um, and how we get put people out in the bigger space beyond the moon. And then all of these things started popping in, and it was so central to some of the conversation pieces that we couldn't catalyze in the third dimension with intellectual knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, of course that is. And it was awareness, is always being aware and be willing to see the unseen, making that invisible visible, because it's there.
Yeah.
But we're
The signs
sometimes we
are
just don't.
everywhere.
They
There's so
are.
many. Everything is a sign. Nothing is random. Everything is
No.
engineered. And this movie that we're experiencing, that we're uh, the protagonist, the primary actor in, this movie is being edited in real time by our unseen support team in the spirit realm, God and our angels and our spirit guides. They're popping in just the right song or just the right lyrics from like they're editing it in real time to make sure that we get the message and that we do whatever course corrections are required in order to stay on track.
And how brilliant is that?
Yeah.
Right? That's the brilliance. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. I recently interviewed Sam the Illusionist, who does a lot of
Hmm.
channeling, and he's popular on YouTube. And one of the things I loved that I got from one of his channeling videos was that what we're experiencing in the present moment is not actually in the present. It's in the past. What we believe to be
Mm.
happening right now is in the past. It's an
Wow.
echo. What will get us into the present moment is not to take in information through our five senses. It's to shut that out and go inward. And when we are in what Joe Dispenza refers to as no time, no place, no body, right? No
Yes.
thing.
Right.
That's the present moment. How profound is that?
That is so powerful and so profound. And I love the word echo.
Mm.
We're in the echo because the echo is the resonance of that which has already happened but has not come into our auditory. So that echo is so, for me, it just resonated so profoundly on, of course, of course.
Yeah. So when people tell you get out of your head, get in your heart, get in the present moment, that distinction of you're still not in the present moment if you're relying on your five senses is, I think, a critical
Indeed.
next step for people.
It is absolutely a critical next step. And that is, so our five senses has been trained to understand a double helix.
Mm-hmm.
Our senses beyond that is an interdimensional DNA that may have 12 strands or infinite strands. We don't know.
Yeah.
And isn't that
Wow, this is
amazing?
so cool. I could just talk to you for hours, but I know we're running up to time here, and we both have hard stops here in just a couple minutes. So, um, if you had to share one last parting nugget of wisdom with our listener or viewer, something maybe that we haven't even discussed yet, and just encapsulate it into something really short, like a 30-second, 1 minute thing max, what would it be?
So it's about news breaks, right? So sometimes the news breaks the truth. And it's because they're sound bites. And so just tune in to that interdimensional knowing. Is it resonating for you? What is that information that's moving in? Is it a break or is it a flow? Is it force or is it flow? Is it breaking or is it building? And
Mm,
so the body will tell you. And no one or no thing has power over us.
yeah. Right. We get so addicted to the news cycle. And if we just unplug from it and go into our heart and recognize that, hey, this actually doesn't serve me, focus on the light. Knowing
Right.
some dark dystopian secret about the cabal does not help me with my soul's mission. And it just distracts me and lowers my vibration. This is not serving me. I am not going to engage. I do not have any more fear to feed this. I'm done. So critical.
Amen. And it's really interesting that the vernacular is a news break. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's not a news flow or a news completion.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if our listener or viewer wants to work with you individually, if they want to learn from you, study with you, all that sort of stuff, get your book and go through your Cochrane Method, what's the next step for them?
So tericochrane.com, that's our all aspects clinical, the Wildatarian Diet. That is my biochemistry aspect of myself. The Global Sustainable Health Institute.com is my advising. That's my private coaching or private advising and teaching methodologies for Cochrane and private advising at the Quantum. So thank you so much. What a great pleasure. This is so fun. To be continued. What a lovely, lovely time spent with you.
Yes. Yeah. We'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Amen. Indeed. Thank you so much,
All
Stephan.
right. Well, thank you, Teri. And thank you, listener. Go out there, reveal some light in the world, make it a great week. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.